Hey there everyone, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're heading to Peckham to take a closer look at one of Britain's most beloved sitcoms, Only Fools and Horses. Created by the brilliant John Sullivan, the adventures of Del Boy, Rodney and the rest of the Trotter family have entertained audiences for decades, with unforgettable characters, hilarious moments and heartwarming stories. But how much do you really know about the show behind the laughs? So pour a Baileys and Cherryade, dust off your camel coat and join us as we uncover 20 things you never knew about Only Fools and Horses. Following the success of 70s sitcom Citizen Smith, John Sullivan began developing a new comedy centred around the world of football. The proposed series focused on lower league football and the colourful personalities associated with the game. A subject Sullivan believed offered plenty of comic potential. However, the idea failed to gain support from BBC executives and was rejected. Rather than abandoning his search for a new project, Sullivan turned his attention to a different concept, inspired by the market traders and wheelers and dealers he had encountered while growing up in South London. It's impossible to imagine anyone other than David Jason playing Del Boy, but he wasn't actually the first choice for the role. John Sullivan originally had Jim Broadbent in mind to play the character. Broadbent would later appear in Only Fools and Horses as Del Boy's memorable nemesis, DCI Roy Slater. Actor N. Rietel was also offered the part, but turned it down due to other commitments. Before Only Fools and Horses was chosen, the show was given the working title Reddies, based on the slang term for money. Sullivan also considered calling the series Big Brother, a title that was later used for the programme's very first episode. John Sullivan often credited one of his school teachers, Jim Trowers, with helping to spark his imagination and love of storytelling. Trowers brought lessons to life in a way that left a lasting impression. Rather than asking pupils to simply read passages from classic authors such as Charles Dickens, he would perform the stories himself, adopting different voices and accents for the characters. After leaving school, Sullivan worked in a variety of jobs, including a plumber's mate, window cleaner, delivery driver, and even a spell in the second-hand car trade. Along the way, he met many colourful personalities and drew on those experiences when creating the characters and worlds featured in his writing. However, he always maintained that it was the works of Dickens, brought vividly to life by Jim Trowers, that first inspired his passion for writing. While John Sullivan based Del Boy on the market traders he had encountered around London, David Jason played a major role in developing the character's appearance. Drawing on people he had known earlier in life, Jason helped create Del Boy's distinctive image. The camel hair coat, flashy gold jewellery, and confident sense of style all contributed to the character's larger-than-life personality. One of Del Boy's most famous catchphrases, "Lovely Jubbly," actually originated long before Only Fools and Horses. The phrase was inspired by Jubbly, a popular orange-flavoured drink sold in pyramid-shaped cartons during the 50s and 60s. The product's advertising slogan was "Lubbly Jubbly." John Sullivan adapted the slogan for Del Boy, changing it to "Lovely Jubbly." Much of Rodney Trotter's personality was inspired by John Sullivan's own experiences growing up. Sullivan had an older brother and often described himself as a dreamer and idealist in his younger years, traits that would become central to Rodney's character. Rodney's lack of confidence, tendency to drift through life and reliance on his older brother all reflected aspects of Sullivan's own youth. The significant age gap between Del and Rodney was also deliberate. It allowed Del Boy to act as both an older brother and a father figure, creating much of the tension and humour that drove the series. When creating Grandad, Sullivan drew inspiration from Albert Steptoe, the scruffy and stubborn father from the classic sitcom Steptoe and Son. Sullivan admired the relationship between Albert and Harold Steptoe and wanted to capture a similar generational dynamic within the Trotter family. However, he had no intention of simply copying the character. Instead, he cast veteran actor Leonard Pierce, who brought his own warmth and charm to the role. When Buster Merrifield joined Only Fools, he was far from a household name. In fact, he had spent 40 years working in banking before deciding to quit his job and change direction at the age of 57 and pursue amateur dramatics. His big opportunity came while performing in a theatre production where he was spotted by a casting director and offered the role of Uncle Albert. The part transformed his life and made him one of the show's most beloved characters. When the first season aired in 1981, it featured a simple instrumental theme built around a saxophone melody. The music lacked the distinctive personality that would later become synonymous with the show. Show creator John Sullivan penned the show's new, memorable opening, and that was used from season 2. Originally, he had hoped the new music would be performed by Cockney duo Chas and Dave. However, after the pair achieved chart success with Ain't No Pleasing You, they were unavailable to record the theme. Instead, Sullivan was persuaded to perform the songs himself, giving the series another distinctive touch. Chas and Dave would later contribute to the show by performing Down to Margate for the classic episode The Jolly Boys Outing. Roger Lloyd Pack's casting as Trigger happened almost entirely by chance. Producer Ray Butt attended a theatre performance to watch another actor he was considering for the role of Del Boy. However, it was Lloyd Pack's performance that caught his attention, impressed by what he saw on stage, but offered him the role of Trigger instead. Although Trigger spent years calling Rodney Dave, one mystery that was quietly solved concerns his own real name. The character's actual name is Colin Ball. While it was never mentioned on screen, the name appeared in official cast listings for the series. Although the show would eventually become one of the most successful and widely watched British television programmes of all time, its early years were far less promising. When the series debuted in 1981, viewing figures were disappointing, and the first 2 seasons struggled to attract a large audience. It was only after repeat broadcast introduced more viewers to Del and Rodney, along with the success of the 3rd season, that the show began to gain momentum. Corinne, the outspoken wife of Denzel, made a strong impression during her appearance in the series. Played by actress Eva Motley, the character clashed with her husband and added another layer of humour to the lives of the Trotters. John Sullivan had planned for Corinne to return in future episodes. However, those plans were tragically cut short when Eva Motley died in 1985 at the age of just 31. Sullivan didn't recast the role out of respect. When Raquel first appeared in the 1988 Christmas special Dates, she was intended to be a one-off character. John Sullivan originally created her as part of a single storyline designed to show Del Boy attempting a more mature relationship. However, the chemistry between Tessa Peake Jones and David Jason was immediately apparent. Audiences responded warmly to the character, and Sullivan recognised that Raquel brought out a different side of Del Boy. She would eventually go on to become a main cast member throughout the series. When Series 6 entered production in 1989, the format changed significantly. Instead of the traditional 30-minute episodes, the series moved to 50-minute instalments, giving John Sullivan more time to develop storylines and explore the characters in greater depth. The longer running time required larger production budgets, with spending increasing by around 40%. The additional funding allowed for more ambitious filming, larger casts, and increasingly elaborate storylines. During the late 1980s, as Only Fools and Horses continued to grow in popularity, there were concerns about the future of the series if David Jason decided to move on to other projects. To prepare for that possibility, Sullivan developed plans for a potential spin-off called Hot Rod. The proposed series would have focused on Rodney Trotter as the central character, following his attempts to build a life independent of Del Boy. In the end, the project never progressed beyond the planning stage. In 2010, Sullivan returned to the world of the Trotters with Rock and Chips, a prequel series set in South London during the early 1960s. The programme explored the lives of the previous generation and revealed how the Trotter family came to be. Viewers were introduced to a young Del Boy, his mother Joan, and the people who shaped the family long before the events of Only Fools and Horses. One of the most interesting casting decisions involved Nicholas Lyndhurst. Having spent decades playing Rodney Trotter, he was cast as Rodney's father, Freddie the Frog. After entertaining television audiences for decades, Only Fools and Horses made the leap to the West End in 2019 with Only Fools and Horses the Musical. The production was co-written by John Sullivan's son, Jim Sullivan, alongside actor and comedian Paul Whitehouse, a lifelong fan of the series. The show premiered at London's Theatre Royal Haymarket and brought many of the sitcom's most memorable moments to the stage. The success of Only Fools and Horses inspired television producers around the world to create their own versions of the sitcom. Adaptations were produced in several countries, including the Netherlands, Portugal, Slovenia and South Africa. Each version was tailored to local audiences, while retaining the core concept of two brothers trying to improve their fortunes through often dubious business ventures. Despite the show's universal themes, attempts to recreate its success were met with mixed results. The greatest difficulties came in the United States, where several remake projects were developed but never progressed to a full series. Many critics and fans have suggested that the unique chemistry between David Jason and Nicholas Lyndhurst, combined with Sullivan's distinctive writing and British cultural references, proved difficult to replicate elsewhere. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Only Fools and Horses. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.